I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
This week, we are going to be talking My Cousin Vinny, the comedy from 1992, the Fox film. Off the top, this is going to be an R-rated conversation because My Cousin Vinny is an R-rated movie. So yes, we might throw some 4-letter words that are not family-friendly. We understand that there are some listeners to this podcast that like to listen with their little ones. So, unfortunately, this is going to be a podcast that will not be safe for the little ones. This is your chance to turn back now, and we will come back next week with a family-friendly movie for you all. This is your warning. Let's fucking do this!
Yay!
My Cousin Vinny, a comedy classic, just like everyone knows the courtroom scene. Just going to throw that one out there. I mean, at least once a week across my feed, I see the courtroom scene with Marissa Tomei talking about the cars.
Weirdly, I had not seen this movie or even much of it. I mean, I had seen some clips back when it first came out, mostly at the Oscars. Because of, Marissa Tomei winning the Oscar for this, and well-deserved. Let's just get that out of the way. So I had kind of seen that when it first came out, and then I didn't really know that much about it until about a month prior to time of recording, when I watched this movie for the first time. So this is technically a rewatch for me, but it's a very recent rewatch.
I have not seen the movie in full in a very long time, so that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the movie. And it's just, we had talked before on how we've kind of done all of the classic Disney movies. So, maybe we get into other movies from our younger days. And yes, that includes the R-rated movies that we definitely were not supposed to watch when we were this young. Because it's 1992. I was like 10.
Yeah, 10 or 11 when this came out, yeah.
So, yeah, definitely should not have been watching this movie. But, when you have cable, you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want, and you just watch whatever was on, and this was on. So yeah, I mean, and the cast, we mentioned Marissa Tomei, obviously Joe Pesci. You got a Joe Pesci movie, you're gonna have some fucks and shits and swears, because that just goes with the territory of the Joe Pesci movie.
Yeah, was what he was known for at the time, especially.
Yeah. Ralph Macchio in this movie, Karate Kid himself, and it's my wheelhouse of movies. So this is I knew him from the Karate Kid, but to see him in outside of that franchise, this is probably one of the few, if not the only movie I've seen of his outside of the Karate Kid franchise, possibly, at least off the top of my head. And we got a Munster. Herman Munster himself, Fred Gwynne, as the judge, and just, he steals the show. As much as, as awesome as Joe Pesci in this movie is, Fred Gwynne and Lane Smith as the prosecutor lawyer just steal this movie for me.
Yeah, this was actually Fred Gwynn's final film. He would finish this movie, and then he would pass the next year. So this ended up being his final performance.
And what a performance he gave.
Yeah, as much as the judge annoyed the crap out of me, there's no villains in this movie except for the unseen murderers. You know, we never see the actual murderers. They are just somewhere off screen. You know, the murder takes place off screen. The actual murderers are never seen. All the people that we meet in the movie, nobody in there is really a bad guy. Even the people who are the antagonists of the film are just people trying to do their job.
Like, even the sheriff, like, you think, oh, this is a small city sheriff, he's gonna get these city slickers. No. Like, the store guy that got killed is a pillar of the community, and the entire town is like, okay, who killed our guy? We need to bring this murderer to justice.
And
he,
the sorry, and the sheriff is never seen to be doing anything underhanded. The two guys who are wrongfully arrested, we hear that they were read their rights. They were brought in properly. The interrogation was done properly. We see the sheriff ask them if they understood their rights. Are they waiving those rights? Did they, you know, once they said they wanted a lawyer, the interrogation stopped. I mean, it kind of is by the book, weirdly.
yeah, they don't even get roughed up, because, you know, we've seen in real life cops roughing up people they've arrested to try to force a confession, and it's like, no, we don't see that here.
I mean, the worst you can blame them for is that there is no vocal or video context to the statements delivered by Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, it's very obvious it's a confused comment. It's not a confession. It's like, yeah, did you shoot the guy? I shot the guy? I shot the guy? Wait a minute. Well, I heard him say he shot the guy. Like, that is the only thing you could think of that would be considered any level of malicious, and it's purely misunderstanding.
And honestly, in the movie, in the court scene, it's not really malicious because he's distracted when Ralph Macchio says those words. And when he reads them back in the court, he is reading off a written transcript. And the woman who was taking down the words did faithfully transcribe the words. I shot him. I shot him. But there's no like rising inflection. There's no question mark intonation at the end. You know, so that kind of I shot him, you know, that bit that you get in a vocal and auditory sense, that does not come through. But he is not misquoting by the letter of the actual text, you know? So you can't call the sheriff a bad actor in the sense of a villainous part. You can't call the prosecutor a bad actor because he is simply prosecuting the evidence that the sheriff has given him. So he is going with what he has. And the judge while he acts like most film judges and quite a lot of just real life judges, he kind of just is acting within the way the law is written. So while I have problems with the way laws are written and enacted a lot of times, I don't think that contempt of court, as it is frequently used, should be allowed. I think if you don't show up to court or are attempting to stop a court case from proceeding, okay, that's contempt of court. I don't think wearing an outfit a judge doesn't like is contempt of court.
And yeah, that's the closest thing we would get to any kind of villain. And it's just mostly he's a guy who's very strict by the book, and here's this city slicker lawyer, doesn't even wear a suit, is very inexperienced in Alabama law, and he says, no, you will know the law of this state. You will dress appropriately for court. You will dress appropriately for court in my courtroom. Is that him being just an asshole? Sure, of course. But from his perspective is he expects a certain level of decorum in his courtroom. Now, again, is it just been him being an asshole? Sure, but from his perspective is, respect the court. And in his opinion, Vinny, Joe Pesci's character, is disrespecting the court due to his ignorance of the law, ignorance of how courtroom proceedings are done, and general unprofessional dress. Like, at most, you can get these two guys is for shoplifting. And that's what they think they're being arrested for. And he didn't even mean to shoplift. His hands were full with snacks for their road trip, so he just pockets another snack because he doesn't want to drop his food. So at most, you can get him for shoplifting. And then when they figure out, oh, it's murder, oh, we're in trouble. But one thing, again, I think it's just because of the era of these movies, is that, again, I like that this movie doesn't waste time. Like, within the first 15 minutes of this movie, we get the introduction to our two victims here, Ralph Macchio's Bill and Michael Wetfield Stan, on their road trip, stopping at a convenience store, getting snacks, the accidental shoplift, they're arrested. Oh, you're arrested for murder. Do you know a lawyer? My Cousin Vinny. Enter Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei. And that is within 15 minutes of the movie. It's one of the things I love about these older movies. It doesn't waste time getting to the point. All the principal characters are introduced within the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
There is one kind of glaring thing that I kind of wonder about. And, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but normally lawyers are only licensed to practice law in a single state, or they get, like, a special dispensation to, practice, there's like some states who are like, well, if you pass the bar in this state, we'll consider you as having passed the bar in our state, but that's slightly rarer. Like, usually you have to take the bar exam in each state you want to practice law in, is my understanding.
And I think the movie tries to explain that in a way to keep the flow going, because he is a New York lawyer. He knows New York law. And when the judge sees that, it's more of, okay, if you're an experienced lawyer, I'll approve you for this case. So he lies through his teeth, saying that he's an accomplished lawyer, gives a fake name because he was an actor at one point, and blah, 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 trying to sneak his way into approval because he really wants to win this case. It's his cousin, and his cousin is innocent. He's going to do whatever it takes to make sure his cousin, an innocent man, doesn't go to jail and gets the chair. I think that is the movie's way of trying to explain that. But again, we need to keep this movie flowing. But he does all of that. Again, this is his cousin. This is family. And he's doing it to protect his family. And I do like, as the movie goes on, yes, he has that bravado because he's Joe Pesci. But throughout, there's those points in the movie where he kind of drops it. He admits, I'm scared. Because if I mess up this case, an innocent man is going to jail and an innocent man might die because I screwed up, because I'm not experienced as a lawyer. It's not, I'm going to go to jail because I lied. That doesn't even cross his mind until like the end of the movie. Like, I need to get these kids off because I know they're innocent. And if I screw up, it's on my head.
Also because it is very clear from the beginning that the state is seeking the death penalty in this.
So, like, if he screws up, they're dead. They're going to get the chair. Multiple times in the movie, they allude to the electric chair. There's even a scene where the two are in their cell and the lights flicker as another inmate is fried. So he's doing everything he can, despite his inexperience. Like, he's in the movie, Vinny has only passed the bar recently, after 6 tries of trying to pass the bar. So and he's never been in court before. So he really knows nothing of courtroom procedure or anything. Learning on the job, learning as he goes. He even says usually a lawyer, once they pass the bar, either they work for a firm and they teach you the ropes, or you're an independent lawyer and you sit in on court and you learn that way. He has had neither of those opportunities because he just passed the bar. So it's like he's making amateur mistakes because he is an amateur. But I love his reason why he became a lawyer. That whole backstory thing that we see him with the prosecutor, kind of getting to know his enemy, as it were. How he talks about how he had a bullshit speeding ticket when he was young, and he was able to talk his way out of it. And the judge kind of said, "Hey, you got that gift of gab. You could be a great lawyer." And kind of, for lack of a better term, mentored him all the way through, to the point where he actually finished law school and then eventually passed the bar. And then there's the scene with Ralph Macchio, how he said, "Hey man, you remember when we went to my cousin's wedding where he married that magician, and all throughout the night he was calling out the tricks, and hey, he's got it in his pocket, he's got it in his hand." So it's almost like Vinny was born to be a lawyer, even though it never crossed his mind until that speeding ticket. And through the movie, you can see that there's hints of it. Once he kind of gets his bearings together, you can start seeing bits and pieces of him being a good lawyer. It's just that the problem is that one of the many jokes of the movie is that he never gets a decent night's sleep. Because every hotel that they're in is near something that makes noise very early in the morning, and he can never sleep. So when he finally gets one good night of sleep, ironically in jail, he is completely on his game, and you see how good a lawyer he is, or at least how good a lawyer he could be if and when he would have more experience. And if he's this good with zero experience, imagine how good a lawyer he would be down the line,
Yeah, there's kind of two things holding him back. One, he's not getting enough sleep, and two, he is trying to do everything on his own. He specifically says that he wants to do the case completely by himself.
Despite Marissa Tomei, his fiance, saying, let me help. Even though she doesn't know how to help, she still wants to help her man because she can see him struggling. And what's the thing that turns the tide? He accepts help. He finally takes a look at those pictures that Lisa, Marissa Tomei's character, took and says, wait a minute. These don't match up. The pictures that she took don't match up with the pictures that the cops took. Something's off here. And that's where he gets the idea to bring in Lisa as a witness, as a car expert. To have the sheriff look up a similar looking car if he can, He puts all of the pieces together. It is not until he literally accepts help from someone else that he's actually able to turn the tide.
Yeah, the thing that I like is that there really isn't any wasted nonsense in the film. You see how much they love each other and everything, and how much he respects her expertise in the way they flirt early on when she's talking about using the torque wrench. And they have the cute little flirting scene in the motel room when he's like, well, how do you know that the torque wrench was fine? And she's like, well, it had just gone through this particular test and, all that kind of stuff, and she's getting like really detailed and nerdy about it.
Well, I guess the damn thing's broken then.
Yeah, which I thought was such a funny scene to work in their flirting, but also that you would expect him to be like the really, macho, misogynist kind of guy. But then you find out he's really not. He respects her intelligence and he respects the things that she knows how to do, and she respects the things that he knows how to do. And they really do make a good pair.
Yeah. I mean, and they never say it outright, but the hint that he very likely met her working as a mechanic himself. Because he even said it, he was working his way through law school as a mechanic. And then she says that every member of her family was a mechanic. So it's possible that is how they met. And she would know cars because every single member of her family is a mechanic. Except for her, she became a hairdresser. But yeah, he respects her nerding out over cars. He respects her nerding out with the sink and the torque wrench. So the fact that he really just says, okay, you went through all of the things, and if it's still broken, then it's broken, And yeah, they really do come off as a great couple in this movie. And Pesci and Tomei have such great chemistry in this. You can believe that they come off as a couple, and that adds so much to the movie. This is a perfect example of not just two people in a relationship, but two people who are partners in multiple senses of the word.
And one of the other things that I like about it is that it's very good at showing a lot of the drawbacks of our quote-unquote justice system without, even though the movie did win, awards, an Oscar specifically for Marissa Tomei, but it's a comedy movie about a very serious subject that avoids being like an Oscar bait movie, Like if you pitch a movie it's like, well, it's two guys end up in the South and are wrongly accused of murder. You're like, I know what kind of movie this is going to be.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, you would think that, there's so many ways you can go about it. They could have easily gone with, oh, we're going to teach these silly slickers a lesson. Don't come to the South. And it doesn't do that. Or the city boys talk about how superior they are to these redneck hicks, and we don't get that. We get some one joke about it from Stan, and he immediately like, oh, if I go far and do any more of this, I'm going to die. But Stan is almost a non-entity in this movie, other than his role as accessory.
Yeah, but the thing that I really like about it is that it's kind of a believable story of mistaken identity. However, it doesn't go the usual way you would kind of expect now. It's not the cops were evil or the prosecutor was in somebody's pocket or, whatever. It's just these guys were in the wrong place at the wrong time. People honestly were mistaken because eyewitness testimony is not always that reliable, and we've known that for a long time. It's fairly anti-death penalty without being like super overly preachy about it. There's the sense that the guy we never see, but there's protesters outside the jail and everything, and he eventually gets executed during the course of the movie. You do kind of wonder if he's innocent just because of, the fact that everybody in the movie except for like the prosecutor and the judge and the sheriff seem to be like very against that guy getting executed. So you do wonder if there was evidence that maybe he was innocent. We have no idea what his case was. But, here's two guys that literally did nothing wrong except for accidentally steal a can of tuna that they really didn't mean to. And suddenly they're put on trial for murder. And really the evidence against them is there were two guys about their age driving a car that sort of looked like theirs around the same time that were seen leaving by a woman with pretty bad eyesight.
Yeah.
I mean that's the entire prosecution case.
And I love, when he, does a little investigating of his own. Vinny, after, he uses Lisa's camera and takes pictures of one of the witnesses' house. Okay, he has dirty windows. And I love that, one blink and you'll miss it line changes the whole case. They're in the diner and the cook makes them grits. And he tells them it takes grits about 15 to 20 minutes to get made. And then once he starts to cross-examine one of the witnesses, he says, well, what did you have for breakfast that day? Well, I had grits. Instant grits? No Southerner would have instant grits. Okay, so you said we were away for 5 minutes, but my expertise, it takes about 20 minutes to make grits. So, did you really see who you thought you saw in 5 minutes, or did you see a completely different set of people in 20 minutes? And I love how almost everything that Vinny experiences in the town, from the moment he walks in to that final court scene, adds up to that final court scene.
It does, that's what I meant earlier about that there's not really a wasted line. And I like when a movie is that tightly written, but it shows what's going to make him a really good lawyer is that he's a sponge, you know? That's what makes you a good detective slash lawyer slash, this is what makes you good at cross-examination and, other things.
And, just to throw it out there, because I want to put him up, because I do want to talk about him, is, there's, before all of this, where Stan is like, yeah, Vinny's going to get us fried. I want my own lawyer, and gets the public defender, and we get the stuttering lawyer, like, oh, hey, I got an experienced lawyer on my side, and then he just goes up in front of the jury, and he's stuttering. And, as myself, dear listener, I cannot tell you the amount of stuttering that of my own accord that I have to edit out of this podcast. My co-host can attest to that. But to have that, to see that in this movie, to see, hey, I don't trust your cousin, I'm going to get my own lawyer, and he gets a lawyer that stutters when he speaks publicly. It is a funny scene, but it and then you really see how, he would say, hey, what happened to all the stuff we were going to talk about? Well, I get nervous. And then you really see the beginnings of what Vinny can do as a lawyer. To the point where Stan says, I want him as my lawyer. And it's like, I love the stuttering lawyer whole thing with him. I love all of that. But I also love that for an experienced lawyer, he forgets 90% of what he was going to say in the courtroom because of his stuttering. And again, it's another moment for Vinny to show his potential as a lawyer.
I will point out that it's not just that the public defender has a stutter, but he makes really ridiculous mistakes. Like when he's questioning one of the witnesses, he asks the guy, do you ever wear glasses? And the guy's like, yeah. And he says, were you wearing glasses when you saw the murderers, walk out of the store? And he said, no, I wasn't. And he was like, so, you can't be sure because you weren't wearing your glasses. And he was like, well, I wear reading glasses. I don't need them to see faraway things. And the jury starts laughing. It's not just that he has a stutter. It's that he doesn't know how to set up the thing. Whereas when Vinny comes back up and talks to the same guy, he's like, so what'd you have for breakfast? Oh, I was eating grits. And he was like, how long did it take you to make the grits? Oh, about 5 minutes. So they were instant grits, and he leads him down this path until he traps him, and it shows that it's not necessarily the nerves or the stutter that made the public defender a bad lawyer. It was the fact that he was just like, oh, glasses for farsightedness are the only type of glasses that you could need. It's like, well, no, he needed reading glasses, His distance vision was fine.
And luckily for Vinny, the asking the same questions to the lady who needed glasses worked out.
Well, yeah, because he could see what type of glasses she was wearing. She had those Coke bottle frames, or those Coke bottle lenses, I do love that scene where he's questioning the woman with the really bad eyesight who needed the glasses. And he goes, how many fingers am I holding up? And the judge goes, let the record show he's holding up 2 fingers. And Vinny just looks at the judge like, "Are you serious right now?" Like, uh,
and the judge figures
really?
that the judge figures that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I see what you're trying to do.
Which I do think was probably the time I laughed more than any moment in the movie was when the judge was like, let the record show he's holding up to, which normally, yes, that would be the thing you would do for the court transcript, except for in this one specific instance.
It was part of his questioning.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this. Again, I've mentioned it before, but it's, it's the scene. Like I said, at least once a week, I see somebody on social media sharing the scene of Marissa Tomei on the stand doing the speech about the cars, how one car could be confused for the other. I'm not a car guy, guys, dear listeners. I'm not a car guy. So I just got to go with the general descriptions here. I know it's going to sound weird, but I could listen to Marissa Tomei in that voice, in that accent, read the phone book, because the way she delivers that entire speech, she earned that Oscar.
Are you saying you larp her?
Yes. We had this conversation when we talked about her in Spider-Man, yes.
Yeah. No, I gotta say, like, Marissa Tomei, like, going back and watching this movie, I'm like, she's hot as Aunt May, and she is hot as Lisa in this movie. Marissa Tomei has always been hot, still hot. Marissa Tomei can get it.
Whatever she's doing, she should keep on doing it because it's working.
And she teach the rest of us? Because, damn.
She is 60 years old and still looks like she's 30. Whatever she's doing, keep doing it, girl.
The thing is, though, is that, yeah, that courtroom scene entirely won her that Oscar. And it is genius, it is well written, and it is even better performed. And the thing is that Joe Pesci just kind of tees up the cue line, and Marissa Tomei just runs with it. That is 99% Marissa Tomei in that scene. And it is just brilliant.
But also the prosecutor antagonizing her. Well, can't you answer the question or can't you?
Well, it's a bullshit question.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that, when you are an expert in a rather niche topic, and there are, as you know, there are a few niche topics that I am rather an expert in. There are some things that, it is, people ask you questions and you're like, oh man, I would have to give you like an entire year-long course in why this question is completely the wrong question to ask, And that is one of those questions, they give her like the short version of it to prove it, But it's her exasperation. I'm like, oh, I have felt that in my soul.
And I love Joe Pesci's acting as she's talking back to the prosecutor. He's like, he kind of taps Ralph Macchio on the shoulder saying, hey, look at this. Watch what she does. He's just leaning back on the chair, folding his arms. Yep, that's my girl.
Yeah, his pride in like, I get to take that home. Like, like, not only is she hot, but look at those brains. Like, and like watch how she eviscerates this man.
And it's like you said earlier, it's like he doesn't just love her for her beauty, because Marissa Tomei, mwah, beautiful woman, we've already said that. But she's also a very intelligent woman. And the fact that he respects her intelligence, her knowledge in certain fields. It's just that from earlier in the movie, up until that point, her expertise could not help him win the case. And when he figures out a way for her expertise to win him the case, he goes for it, even though he pissed her off earlier in the scene by acting like an asshole.
Yeah. But you know what I think the other thing that attracts him to her is you said it before that like the reason he went into law is because that judge realized early on that he's a talker, you know? He's got that way of verbally eviscerating people. And this is the way these two talk to each other. It gives me shades of like Tracy and Hepburn back in the day, or like Nick and Nora from the Thin Man movies or something, you know, like that couple that constantly throws barbs back at each other, but you know that they love each other dearly, but they've got that witty back and forth. Or like Benedict and Beatrice, if I can bring in some Shakespeare. And I can, because it's my show as well. But I think that's why, you know, he's got that, like, you know, elbow jab to Ralph Macchio. He's like, you know, watch her insult this idiot kind of thing. You know?
And then he does it again when she goes into the tire tracks, showing her the picture, you know, using her picture of the tire tracks, and he just sits on the prosecutor's desk again, like, watch this. Watch her go.
Yeah. And I love watching somebody I respect do that sort of thing. When you get somebody on a thing that they're passionate about and somebody has like really pissed them off, you know, and they're about to drop the like, well, actually, to end all well actuallys, but they actually know what they're talking about, you know? It's not some like neckbeard fedora dude on Reddit that's like, well, actually, that, like, you know, that's just talking out of his ass. Like it's someone who really knows their subject.
And it's another thing that comes back from something that happened in the movie, because she mentions cars getting stuck in the mud. One, their car got stuck in the mud earlier in the movie, and there was another passerby, I think it was a cop from earlier in the movie when they got in and their car was wobbly, and he said, yeah, our town is known for being very muddy. And she plays into that. Anyone who's ever had their car stuck in the mud, and the entire jury goes, oh, yeah.
I like the woman in the jury that's like, that is true. Like, you kind of expected her to go like, happened to me in my driveway this morning.
So again, it's another one of those, the characters are learning this town and using it in their defense. Like you said, there is no wasted lines in this movie. Everything comes back. Everything that's happened to Lisa and Vinny in this entire movie comes back in that final court scene.
Yeah, like you think that she's just along for the ride and she's just wandering around with her cute little pink camera taking pictures, because she seems to be at first the typical bubble-headed girlfriend, you know, but wow, is she not, you know? She's probably even smarter than he is by the end of it. And her picture taking and her expertise is what saves the day. And because of her pictures, he's able to get the sheriff to put out an APB on similar looking cars, and they find one a couple of states over in Georgia where this movie was filmed. Thank you very much. And they were able to find the actual killers who had been arrested on a different charge. It turns out that the similar looking car had been stolen, and they had been arrested for driving a stolen car, and the cops that arrested them found what they didn't know was the murder weapon, but it was the murder weapon, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll hold them for you, and you know.
Again, that's another thing that comes back because that's what the prosecutor says. If only we could find the murder weapon, then this is an open and shut case. Well, guess what? They found the murder weapon. It just happened to be a couple of states over.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so terrifying when you remove the comedy portion. You know, step back from the comedy just for a second, and this is such a terrifying case. These guys were moments away from being convicted by a jury and being given the death penalty on the basis of you look like two guys that were there and you were driving a similar car. Now, in 1992, cars were much more varied in appearance, and these guys were driving a car from the 60s, a time in which cars were much more diverse in the way they looked. Okay. But just think about today. Think about how uniform cars kind of look. You know, there's only like 3 or 4 vague kind of ways cars look, unless you're really a car person. If you're not a car person and somebody asks you to identify what kind of car somebody was driving, unless you got a really good look at the type of car, as in the manufacturer logo on the back of the car as it drove away, if you were just seeing it from a distance, you are basically getting like an SUV, a pickup truck of some sort, or like a smaller 2-door or 4-door sedan, maybe a Jeep thrown in there. Okay? You know, that's kind of your standard car shapes. And then you get a couple of vague colors. You know, you've got your silvery grays and your whites and your reddish shades and your blues, maybe. Occasionally you'll get a green or a purple. Those are kind of rare. Maybe a gold, but those are also getting rare these days. You know, so you've got 4, maybe 5 shapes and 4 or 5 colors that you're dealing with. I mean, you really gonna like put somebody's life on the line for they sort of look at a distance like the type of person that, you know, they have similar looking hair and a similar looking body shape, and they were driving a similar looking car? That is literally the entire case for these guys, and they almost got convicted and sent to the electric chair over it. And that is terrifying when you remove the comedy aspect of the fish out of water New York lawyer in Alabama part of it, you know?
And, you know, there are countless stories of similar events. People who are arrested because they match the description of someone they're looking for, and they don't get off. They do end up in jail. How many times have we heard stories of people who were arrested 10, 15, 20 years in jail for a crime they never committed? And it's only after those 10, 15, 20 years where the evidence comes out, no, they didn't do this, and they're free. That's almost daily. We hear stories like that.
Yeah. It is so weird that this movie has been written about by multiple Supreme Court justices and famous legal scholars.
And a few YouTube lawyers.
Well, yeah, and YouTube lawyers. But I mean, this movie is used in law classes to this day because, yes, it's a silly movie, but nothing in this movie is out of the realm of possibility. And in fact, a lot of it was taken from real life cases and stuff of like things that had happened or stories from lawyers is my understanding, that the guy who wrote it had talked to lawyers or judges or whatever of like things that had happened in courtroom.
You mentioned earlier that, Vinny wants to win his first case on his own. And so, and I mentioned that he kind of lies through his teeth for his credentials. And at the end, he's vouched for by the very judge that got him to be a lawyer in the first place. When they search him up and, he comes up, oh, he's an accredited lawyer, and it's the judge that inspired him to be a lawyer in the first place. He could have easily made that call earlier in the movie and say, hey, can you do me a solid, vouch for me? It's my first case. And most of this movie probably would not have happened. Because, okay, he's accredited. There's this judge in New York, an acclaimed judge that is vouching for this guy. So I'm gonna let him do his thing. But he wanted to do it on his own. And it's not until Lisa calls him saying, hey, could you vouch for Vinny? He really needs the help. And while he's disappointed, he's just, hey, it's at the end, it's his mentor came through for him, and I like that. And, and you mentioned before how they kind of take shots at each other, but it's like, it's a very loving way. And like you can tell that these two characters are supposed to be in love, because it's like, hey, I promised I'd marry you when I won my first case. Let's get married this weekend. No. I want to get married in a church. I want bridesmaids. I want the whole thing. Well, I thought it'd be spontaneous, and spontaneous is romantic. Farts are spontaneous. That's not romantic. And it's like, why would I marry you anyway? You couldn't even win a case on your own. So it's like they're busting each other, but it's very much, in a very loving way. And I do like, that's how the movie goes out. Because with these two characters still kind of messing with each other, but you could tell that these two characters genuinely love each other.
Yeah.
So, with all of that said, Kiki, does My Cousin Vinny have the magic?
Yeah. There's one little part which we skipped over that is, a little bit homophobic and doesn't hold up, and hopefully today would have been left out of the movie. But it's a little bit cringe, but the rest of the movie holds up very, very well, and I do recommend it. I will say it's a bit annoying in that when we put this film on our list to do just a couple of weeks before recording, it was on Hulu as part of their normal, package. It was part of the Disney Plus, Hulu, whatever. And then when we went to record, it had disappeared and was put under an extra paywall. This keeps happening to us.
I mean, it's that thing. It's the new month, so all the old here are these movies that are leaving. Here are all the new movies we have for the month.
They need to stop doing that. It was the promise of streaming that, you just have access to everything whenever you want. That was supposed to be the great thing about the internet and streaming. And now they've made it worse by physical media or maybe yo-ho, yo-ho is all I'm going to say.
I am also going to say this movie has the magic. This movie still is funny. This movie is still a classic, and it's like, I mean, we didn't even talk about the running gag about the pool player that stiffed him for $200 and all of that. I mean, it's such a small part of the movie, but it is, that running bit is pretty funny, and the payoff for that is just what the character deserved.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a classic movie, and if you haven't seen the movie in a while, you should find a way to watch it. If you've never seen this movie, go out and search for it. Good movie. So next week will be a family-friendly movie. There is no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. We're going to talk about Air Bud next week. This is a movie that, again, it's another one that's been on our list for a while, and why not just do this one now? So come back next week for Air Bud, and we will talk to you all next time.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.